morning, everybody. I am very excited and honored to be here. What I wanted to talk about is a map that we've been drawing at Carnegie Mellon, and it's a map of the big components of artificial intelligence. As we're turning this in, we're introducing an artificial intelligence major into CMU because it's so important to train up folks with the skills needed to build and develop these systems. And at the same time, we ourselves need to understand what we should be thinking about getting ready for 5 years and 10 years in the future, which is a century away in AI development time. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. So briefly, indulge me while I remind you of the context here. In 1965, a few folks said we can use computers to think like humans. And they broke down the problem into saying what we need to do is computerize perception, the decision-making, and action. So that already gives us somewhat of a breakdown of what's going on in AI. Everything was going great for a while until we discovered that we couldn't do decisions properly if we couldn't predict what was going to happen next. We were awesome at games like chess, where you actually can exactly say, this is what will happen if I do this and my opponent does that. But most parts of the world, to do with driving autonomous vehicles or providing information to humans, turned out not to be like that. So the big push between 2000 and about 2012 has all been in machine learning. What that now gives us is the decision boxes in the full AI systems have got something to use when they're planning out what's going to happen next. So that's very good news. What that leaves us with now is this situation as the general map that we're using for artificial intelligence. We talk about it as the AI stack, and I'm going to quickly walk you through it and then discuss the places where we see the most need for new stuff, the places which are most potentially fearsome in what's going on. So let's begin with perception. Perception has grown very rapidly in the last few years as computer vision has begun to, in a sense, work. So for example, we can now have hundreds of street intersections in Pittsburgh where there's cameras on the traffic lights, and the traffic lights can very usefully plan every single car. They individually work out what they can do to help the overall needs of individual cars. It's reduced the drive time through Pittsburgh by 24% just by great perception of what's happening. Another thing which is new, this was not around 2 years ago, but now we can use it in all kinds of ways, is because computer vision has developed so quickly and the ability to gimbal cameras has developed well in the civilian world now. If I walk into a room, I can have a computer 80 feet away which can, within a fifth of a second, get a camera pointed at my eye and zoomed in with such accuracy that it can take a 2000 by 2000 infrared image of my eye and identify me. This is now going into production for vehicles on the US Army which want to be able to do a quick scan and identify everyone within 50 or 100 feet, where that's applicable and legal according to the rules of engagement. We can do this now. There's not humorous, but completely harmless opportunities, like it's very easy now to build a store where you walk in, pick something off the shelf, walk out. You don't get arrested because your eye was scanned at some point and you were charged. Here's an important example. It's very cute. It looks like a bunch of stick figures dancing. What it actually is a project by two second-year PhD students at CMU who just realized that based on two things they'd learned in two separate AI courses, you can do this now. What it is you can track full body motion of large groups of people using a single monocular camera. Previously, everyone had instrumented rooms and environments with dozens of cameras and sometimes put dots on people to see what's happening. We can now monitor a crowd and look for the one person who suddenly reaches into a bag to pick something up. We can use this for dance lessons for kids. And it really is like living in Hogwarts at the moment in an AI lab, because every couple of months, new crazy things come up. And again, this is exciting, but the theme of this conference is we have to think about the other consequences. As you know, there's been a great deal of movement in the machine learning to support human emotion recognition. I'm not going to go into that in detail because I don't have enough time. I'll mention that one of the successful use cases here has been when you're watching a cohort of patients who are being treated for depression. If you can look at 1 minute of video of their face every day, it turns out that we are able to predict whether the treatment for depression is effective about 6 weeks before the physician or the patient has actually made that decision. So that is, again, exciting. The idea of communicating between humans and computers just on the basis of speech, language, and vision is now old-fashioned. You always bring in human emotional state into your discussion. Similarly with voice, we had some interesting incidents recently where there were hoax calls to the Coast Guard based on the sonogram of the person's voice. Rita Singh, one of our faculty, who was incidentally supported by the Eric Schmidt Foundation, managed to produce a system which was able to estimate the person's height to within 1 centimeter, their weight to within 2 pounds, their area of origin, their ethnic background, and a whole bunch of other features. When we caught the person, she was correct to within 1 centimeter and 2 pounds and so forth. This was because she was able to apply deep learning using the TensorFlow system to these sonograms very, very quickly instead of requiring 10 years of research these days to do that. As you can imagine, she is now besieged with security forces who need her help, and she's now very interested in the signs of early dementia and other emotional instability issues from the voice. So as we move up the stack, we're now getting into an area where I would say it's less mature, and this is where we are urgently looking to hire faculty who are going to educate our students, and our students are demanding education. I really want you to get this as a clear takeaway message. Machine learning is really important, and it will continue to improve, but it is kind of done. The crazy new stuff is living on top of machine learning with decision-making systems which are now able to have models of the world through machine learning. So the things here which are particularly important, this block here we call the AI infrastructure block. This is the horizontal technologies which are then used by actual applications. One of them, which is so unsexy, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but just please believe me that it's really important, is the creation of large planetary scale knowledge graphs. Google and Amazon and Alexa and Siri are all powered by corporate knowledge graphs, all with knowledge of all the entities in their domains and how they link together. There's a national effort underway now to create an open source, much larger version of this, and this affects everyone, from folks in finance who are trying to predict and understand what the impact of disasters are on the supply chain, through to medical technologists who are looking to see if there's some phenomenon among the patients who are not responsive to Serenafib in stage 3 liver cancer. So this is a huge and exciting effort, and many organizations have come together for this one. The next important game changer here is, as we just heard, game theory. In addition to the celebrated AlphaGo win, this year was the first time computers completely beat humans in no-limit Texas Hold'em. This was work done by Thomas Sandholm at CMU. The reason this is significant is poker is a game where you have to take into account that your opponent's actions will be trying to deceive you about their hidden state of the world. And you yourself will lose a lot of money if you just play optimally. You have to deliberately mislead in what you're doing. You have to find the best thing to do in a world where all of your actions supply information to a possible adversary. Solving this was what we believe is one of the biggest linear programs ever run tens of millions of hours on supercomputer time. And so for those of you from the numerical analysis world, linear programming is cool again. You can feel happy. All right. The next one, and I think this is going to come a lot today, is safety. In the big internet companies, the Googles, the Amazons, and so forth, we have been able to build systems rapidly because they're not safety critical, and we can use the philosophy of launch, discover problems, and iterate. That philosophy cannot be transformed over to safety critical worlds. And so although many of us get this frustration, why are the defense companies so slow? Why aren't they nimble like Silicon Valley? The answer is they cannot be. It would be unethical. So aside from talking about it, the next intellectual war is what you do about safety of a system which is adapting over its life. And we have two camps of academics who are both fighting each other, and I love the battle because I just support whoever's going to win in the end. One camp are the statistical testers who write software to carefully watch everything an autonomous system is doing and consistently invent, through a massive AI search, the scenario which we predict is going to be the worst scenario for the system. So these are the statistical testing folks. The other folks are the theorem provers. And these are people who are having some significant success in actually publishing adaptive AI programs which come along with a proof that even in the worst case scenario of inputs, they can't go crazy. And the most celebrated example of this was a recent proof by Andre Platzer of the safety of the new FAA anti-aircraft collision system, where he didn't manage to prove it. He instead discovered 100,000 different edge cases where it would fail, and that was able to be fixed before it went into production. Now, at the very top of the AI stack, these are the people who are using the infrastructure and the machine learning and the perception underneath it to do end-user applications. And of course, the big commercial battle at the moment is in personal assistance. There is an open question as to whether and when and how we can develop personal assistance for warfighters and commanders to have that full sort of set of information which helps remove the fog of war without getting in their way with too much information. Here are some other examples of the kind of things that are going on. That little snake-like guy is the world's first robot approved by the FDA. And it is actually, this is going to be horrible, so everyone's finished their breakfast. It can go down pretty much any of your orifices, and it will do it autonomously in a self-driving type of way, which sounds horrible, does to me too, but is actually much safer than if it's guided by a mediumly skilled surgeon. And so that area of tools which help make surgeons and other experts' lives better is very important. There's a cute little example running on the bottom there, which is an application to help people who are learning to climb, where you project challenges for the learner and evaluate how well they're performing to help them in their learning. And that's got a very important lesson behind it, which I will secretly reveal in just a moment. All right, the final box is autonomy, and look what's happening here. This is what's going on for people writing autonomous systems. They have to have software where groups plan very coordinated actions together in a world where there are other things going on. And at that point, you didn't see it probably clearly, but they managed to score a goal through this collective planning. The reason that autonomy is interesting is it's an undeveloped field. We at CMU and many other places can build autonomous systems, but we're doing it like a cottage industry. We have a general theory of, to build a system, you create a set of things called behaviors, which are little subsystems which are responsible for subtasks, and they communicate generally and asynchronously with a master where they send messages to each other. That's the basis of the architecture of self-driving and so forth. But we strongly believe this is in the same sort of era as management of data was before the invention of relational databases. It's a cottage industry. Someone, and we hope it's the United States, is going to formalize this technology so that it's not just a few hundred people around the country who need to be hired if someone wants to build a new autonomous system. Here's a nice example of this is still moving fast. There is now an autonomous battleship. It obeys the rules of the sea, so it's a self-driving battleship. Of course, it does not manage weapon systems. It is used for submarine hunting. But this is going out, I believe it's out now, with a crew of only 12 humans in order to massively scale up the ability to do large ocean patrolling by the United States. And this was another very important example. This is autonomy in a cyber system. For All Secure is a company in Pittsburgh which won a competition to have an AI which is not allowed any human help compete against 20 other AIs in a DARPA competition where the AIs were trying to break into each other's systems and break into some external systems. And so in a nail-biting 2 days, all of these systems had to run. It was much less exciting to watch than, say, the DARPA Grand Challenge with cars or robots, because you just saw these boxes humming. But in the end, the systems did very well. This system called Mayhem, which won, is still not as good as the 12th best hacking team in the world, but it is better than the 13th best hacking team in the world. So there's lots of effort we're now pushing in to make this work. And again, I'm saving it for a second punchline as to why this is so significant. All right, so I've already described this. There's lots of work still to be done on the machine learning stacks, but even if no one comes up with new magic at that level, there's still new things to be built, primarily by going back to our roots of decision systems, autonomy systems, and human AI systems. Some of the things which get us really excited, and this is one of the reasons why we have undergraduates banging down our doors telling us we have to have an AI major, is for the purpose of national security, there is an opportunity for this country to come up with a viable third offset, because we still have the largest high-tech manufacturing base and the largest infrastructure. We could afford, if we wanted to, and if we needed to, be surveilling pretty much the whole world with autonomous drones of various kinds. I'm not saying we'd want to do that, but there's not a technology gap there where I think it's actually too difficult to do. This is now practical. The next thing is we are losing the cyber wars in terms of numbers. We are completely outgunned in terms of personnel by China and Russia. But the work that's being done by all those hundreds of thousands of cyber warriors, some of it's pretty boring when you look at it. And so the question comes, can we stay 6 months or 18 months ahead by doing the automation of the boring tasks so that we're fighting with 500 strong AI engineers against 10,000 specially trained human cyber engineers? Trouble with being a human is you cannot make decisions in less than a quarter of a second. And so to some extent, we have an advantage over them. I mentioned the Open Knowledge Network. Another thing which I cannot emphasize how much things have changed. There are tasks which 5 years ago would have been a person's PhD thesis or would have been a big project funded by DARPA, which now a couple of smart graduate students can do in a few months. So do not think of new AI systems as needing to wait a couple of years to be put together, or maybe 5 years to be put together, as would a new missile design, for instance. These are things which can happen rapidly. And finally, it is, if the country needs it, we can provide, the AI community, going with consumer companies like Sony Aibo and DJI drones, can produce technology to very quickly manage and remove the fog of war from disaster scenarios. So we're excited by that. But there are threats. if an AI disaster happens, and that would, for instance, be an autonomous car killing people due to serious bugs, and frankly, I believe that's already happened, then at some point, AI systems are going to be locked down for development, at least in the United States. There are some even more horrible scenarios, which I don't want to talk about on the stage, which we're really worried about, will cause the complete lockdown of robotics research. The civil disorder from job loss is a very real possibility, and so many of the AI researchers now are working specifically on the question of how to keep humans relevant here. And the last thing I'll mention is it's also a threat, just as it's a good thing that we're able to do AI so quickly. Just as one of our genius grad students can come up with something quickly, so can someone less desirable. And we have to be ready for that in what we're doing. The final punchline I wanted to mention is that nice little system for AI wall climbing. That was developed by a team of 3 students who 13 weeks before had known no computer science. And this is as a result of putting together a very rapid education in the basics of computer science and the ability to mash up open source AI systems. Think about it. We can actually create AI engineers in 13 weeks. So that's the landscape we're dealing with. It's very exciting. I am optimistic that we will use this to improve the human condition, but there are a lot of risks. Thank you.